Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the WealthWise Podcast. I am your co-host Roger Bryan, and that's
Richard Lorenzen.
Richard, thank you for putting up with my little technical difficulties over here. We are dealing with a winter snowstorm in Ohio, and we've also got a nanny that called off sick halfway through the day, and I did not have a time to adjust and bring home the right technology, so we are doing our best.
It's always something.
It's always something, isn't it? Now, Most important, right out of the gate, since the summer, we've been talking about starting a real estate fund. We have been through all of the strategies, the plan, the competitive analysis, the financials. And then yesterday, we finally made our first offer on a property. Now, I want to dive into the details of that property, what we like about it, what we've got from a numbers perspective. And then also, I think I sent back over another counter offer on the property. It's funny, when I first read it, I'm like, why in the world are they making that offer? And then I took a few minutes and I'm like, oh, she's pre-positioning for what our counter would be, because technically the next counter would be what we actually said would be our limit, right? So let's walk through the whole property. Richard, do you want to give a breakdown or do you want me to? Because I've got the numbers up.
Let's do it. So I'll start with the big picture and then you can go a little deeper. But what we're looking at are two single family houses that are on one property. It's one parcel, correct?
It is one parcel. You would call it a duplex, but it's very rare in that they are individual structures not connected to each other.
So not two single family houses, a duplex. Is that what we're saying?
Well, it's technically legally called a duplex, but it's rare in that they're not connected to each other. One building. They're actually two buildings. Okay. Super rare.
So we're looking at a duplex. Two individual detached units that are on one property. Both units are rented out. This is do we want to say it's roughly in the Cleveland, Ohio area?
Well, no, it's in North Canton, which technically would be the Canton, Ohio market, which is completely different than Cleveland because it does make a difference on cap rates.
Okay, fair enough. So the property is for sale for a total of $330,000.
Yes, that's the asking price.
And it's bringing in gross rents of, is it $3,100 or $3,200 per month?
It is in almost $3,190, so almost $3,200 a month.
So $3,190. Okay. And so we came across this property maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was right before Thanksgiving because I know Claire and I went and walked through it on Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, because these types of properties go quick in this market. So the first day it was listed, I was messaging the realtor who got me in touch with the person that could show it to me, and I was in there within 24 hours. So now we're on the clock, right? We had Thanksgiving weekend to kind of mull things around because nobody's really moving, but it's now Tuesday. We made our offer yesterday and we're close. We're really close, but we got to get into those details and the counter offer.
Yep. And so, it's listed with a realtor, and the property itself is all recently renovated. They have two, solid tenants that are in each of the units. And overall, it looked like a good deal from a cap rate standpoint. Once we started to dig into the numbers, we noticed that the cap rate that was advertised maybe wasn't exactly what the real cap rate is because of some differences in how they were doing the accounting, or the owner is paying some of the utility, the owner's paying the electricity.
Yeah, and this is super important for anybody that's looking to buy investment properties. These are some of the questions that you have to ask and you have to get documentation for, and it's something that can often be overlooked that makes a major difference. So one of the first things that I ask for is, I'm like, I can go onto the county auditor's website, I can get the taxes, right? I can calculate average insurance costs based on normal numbers, but I always want to see the utility bills, right? I want to see how much is being spent each month, water, electric, gas, sewer, all of the different things that can come up. And when I asked for that this time, all of a sudden the cap rate fell by 22%, because they're advertising gross rents versus property value. but they weren't taking into account that the owner of the property is paying both electric and water. Now, electric is $500 a month. I got a little upset with the seller because they're like, no, the average is 200, and they sent like 2 years of statements. And I'm like, the numbers went up, almost tripled right around the same time that the second lease was signed, right? It's not uncommon that if you have somebody move into a unit, utility costs go up.
They're using electricity.
They're using electricity, and explodes.
Yeah.
So that cap rate brought, or that expense, the OpEx brought the cap rate down.
Yep.
And we had to change our offer, right?
Yep.
So they wanted 330. We came in and offered 301. They countered at 315. We countered at 306. And now they're countering at 310, which this morning we agreed was the number we wanted to go in at. But the realtor changed a couple things. They wanted the closing costs to be split, and they wanted the inspection period to go from 14 days to 7, which nobody agrees to 7-day inspection unless you're buying it as is. It's hard to get everything in that fast. So at first I was like, why is she doing that? And then I literally sat there and thought about it. She's wanting me to come back and say, we'll agree to 310, but we want you guys to pay closing costs and we want our normal inspection terms, which in the end was what we wanted, right? It's pretty much aligned. The variables here are, right, it is unique in that it is 2 buildings, which is an advantage. You can market them as individual houses. They are remodeled in the last 12 months, and a decent job was done. They look good. It wasn't finished. You know what I mean? Like finished, like you would do your own home. There's nooks and crannies and stuff where things are misaligned, but it's a rental property. It's on a main road, which I like. Those rent so much easier. And it's right across the street from a major shopping center that has an Aldi's as an anchor, which around here is a pretty good anchor store. It's in the right school district. It's close to everything. It's got so much good going for it.
So meaning though, so if one of those tenants decided that they were moving out at the end of their lease term, you think it would be fairly easy and fast to replace them with a new tenant?
Yeah, easily 7,000 to 8,000 cars a day drive right in front of this place. So that's advantageous. We've noticed that when we buy properties on main roads, they rent so much faster. You put up a sign, you've got 15 phone calls the first day, which is a good sign. The current owner tried to sell this place for the same price a year ago, but did not have tenants. They were not remodeled. And the front unit actually used to be a commercial space, right? If you look at the pictures of the property online, it's still the non-remodeled commercial space. The last appraisal was done prior to the remodel, so it makes it a little hard to get true valuations on it. We're basing our offers primarily on the cap rate and the cash on cash rate in order to try to hit numbers that we think would be attractive to investors. And we're on the low end of the numbers, but we're not outside of the attractive range. So it's still a viable deal. The other thing that we did, and we recommend every investor do this, is we also compared it against some of the other more common types of transactions in the market, right? There are, in Massillon, Ohio, one step below North Canton from a school district perspective, a lot of duplexes that sell around $200,000 that have $800 or $900 a month rentals on each side. So you've got a slightly lower cap rate, a much lower cash on cash rate, but you do have less out-of-pocket cash being floated. The advantage of that, though, too, is you don't have the electric and the water problem, right? You don't have the heavy OpEx. Why is that important? It's cleaner accounting. It's just cleaner and it's easier. I know as someone who has rented commercial space where you sometimes get in and there's shared utilities and the owner tries to divide it based on square footage, but then you might have the largest square footage but only be there once a month, and the gym next door might be using all the electricity. So
yeah, your side question on that is, do you know how it's divided between the units? Is it based on square footage, or are there individual meters?
Well, if there were individual meters, they would be billed individually.
Right. Okay.
So there's not individual meters. That's the problem.
How is it divided?
It's not. The owner pays
not
it all.
At all.
Yeah. So he inflated the rents in order to cover that.
When we look at like that huge jump in electricity that took place in like I think it was in June, is that just because somebody was occupying the second unit?
That's what I think. So the main unit, the biggest one, which is the 3-bedroom, 1-bath that was rented out in June, right? Prior to that being rented out, the electric bill was under $200.
But the owner was living there at that point.
Well, that's what they're trying to tell me, but I'm not buying it.
So you think it was vacant?
The pictures online tell me it was vacant. That's why I never believe anything that realtors say, right? Here's the realtor's job. The realtor's job is to sell you on the potential of a property. Your job as a buyer or as an investor is to buy on the reality of the property. The numbers today, the appraisal today, the pictures today, everything today.
Do you think they have any other offers yet?
I do not think so. Usually a realtor would brag about like, hey, we've got another offer coming in. That hasn't happened. But I do know, given this market, that it's only a matter of time now that Thanksgiving's over. They happened to list it the day before Thanksgiving. Right. So you might not have had a lot of eyeballs out there where now Monday, Tuesday you do.
Because it's interesting to me that it was listed a year ago at 330 and we know it was vacant. It wasn't renovated yet. Now it's occupied and it's renovated. So it was relisted for the same price, 330, which is I guess the price the seller wants, but they're still willing to take like a $20,000 haircut even after the renovation costs. I'm just like I like getting into the psychology of the seller. I'm curious about why that seems to be, but it might not, it might not indicate anything.
Is this address not coming up?
Zillow says it was listed last year at the same price.
Okay, that's what I was about to pull up. My understanding is this may be, I don't want to call it an inheritance item, but the son who is trying to sell it, all of the deed and everything is in his mom's name. So I don't know if this is an aging parent, if this is an asset transfer, or if it could be a deceased mom. I don't know, but I do know that we're dealing with the son, but everything's titled to the mom.
Interesting.
So okay. That can sometimes add to the equation of why things could be.
Yeah, because that goes also to the question of like, is he motivated? And how motivated?
It seems like it if they're willing to come this much off, right?
Yeah, especially after renovate. Like they spent a year and money renovating the property to get 330. And now they're willing to take a $20K haircut in less than 5 days. You know what I'm saying? That's why I'm like, maybe they're very motivated. Maybe his cost basis is like nothing because he inherited it. You know
exactly. So I do know with confidence. Well, I don't know with confidence. I feel with confidence if we went back right now at 210, which is what we thought we would do this morning. 210 would be nice. 310, we would probably get it. Then comes the question of if this is an anchor asset inside of a fund and we go out with the model that we had, can we raise the money inside of the fund to pay this property off and then roll over our down payment into property 2? And then it really just becomes a game of speed. How fast can you roll into the next property, raise the money to pay it off, and keep jumping?
That's the key question, because I think we've determined now that this is a decent investment. The property is a good investment, but is it a good, cornerstone asset to build a fund off of? And what would be the scaling strategy for the fund, which we haven't really. We've started to map it out again this morning, but I feel like we haven't really landed on exactly what the model is. Because it's only worth doing this if we could buy like 5 more in the next 6 months, in my opinion. Like it needs to become a catalyst for scaling.
No, it does. Now 5 more in the next 6 months is really just going to come down to, right?
What the market can bear.
Well, I think the market's there for it, right? We've been talking about for 6 months how these duplexes come up, but then they're gone within a week, right? If you get your capital organized and you have the right realtor in place and that you can jump on them one day after they come up and you can go in, you can make offers, you can close quick, and you get a reputation for that locally. The sky's the limit. It takes a little bit of time to get there, but it's 100% doable. I would say if our goal was to do 5 properties, it might take a year or 2 to do 5, but then we could figure out how to do one every 2 months and be doing 6 a year after that. But that means we would have to move out of like doing traditional 30 years and really be using a credit line, right? A credit line with $250,000 in it so that we could write a check for the full property without having to deal with any financing. And then knowing that we've got a pool of investors to go to recoup the capital, pay off the credit line, and go do the next one. That's where the scalability comes. We don't have that infrastructure set up yet.
Right.
Doesn't mean we couldn't. We just have to get there.
Yeah, we just need to build the model to get there. I mean, if the goal is to build a $100 million fund, that's what I'm benchmarking against. That's like, for example, if we're buying the $300,000 duplexes, you need what, 300 of those?
You do now, for example. So
to buy 300 of them before we're 80 years old.
Well, so here's the thing too. So tomorrow morning, I talked to you about, there's this commercial property in downtown Massillon. I even posted about this on social media. It's one of the oldest buildings in Massillon, Ohio. It was a jewelry store since 1897. So it's got like this antique charm to it. But the second and third floors haven't been touched since the 60s, right? The city's coming out. I've got HVAC, windows, plumbing, electrical. Like tomorrow I'll have an army in there from like 8:30 in the morning till 11 o'clock, looking the thing over, trying to make sure that I have a full feel for what it is. Why am I talking about this? Well, it could easily have 2 apartments in it. It could possibly have 3 apartments in it. But here's the kicker. The 2 buildings to the left of it were demolished in 2019, and it's an empty lot. The city wants a developer to buy that and put in like an 8 to 12 unit apartment building right in downtown Massillon, right on the main corner in the entire city. So we may be looking at duplexes, right? But if we had the financing and the wherewithal, I don't know that we do at this point, right? I'm building a relationship with the city. Right there is a $2 million property.
Yeah.
Right. So that becomes a different game. And we're one step away from it. It's not that it's like way out there in the future, right? We know where we can do it. We know how we can do it. Getting the capital to do it, a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. In 2024, they actually listed it for $350. And then they dropped it to $329. And then they removed the listing, and that's when they went through and did the remodeling. And it is funny, right? They remodeled it. And Richard, it's pretty nice. Like the pictures on Zillow, I do think are actually of it remodeled. Those are the remodeled pictures. And you can tell by looking at it on Zillow, it's nice looking.
Yeah, it's a nice looking property.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. They listed it for $350. That's interesting. I don't know if that's maybe just a case of like an out of touch with reality seller, but the fact that we're a year later with now money that they sunk into it and they're willing to sell for 300 or 310, that's interesting. But this could be like an estate kind of probate situation.
Yep. Which is advantageous. I hate to say it like that, but like the best deals that I have ever done have all been for sale by owner. And I would say a good chunk of them have actually been transfer of asset between generations, right? Where people don't want to deal with it.
The longer term tenant that's been in there, they've been there for 5 years, I think you were saying, right?
Yes. The back building has been a rental.
So the front one is maybe where the mother could have potentially been living.
No, the front one was a commercial property. It was 100% a commercial property, right? There were pictures online that I'm trying to find that shows it as a retail shop. That's another unique element to this. It's got a really rare, and I love these, like what's called an R2B2 zoning, where it can be either residential or commercial. Typically, you only get one. Mm-hmm. So if in the future, if commercial real estate becomes the thing again in that market, you could turn it back into a storefront without any issues with the city. That's like the one in Canal Fulton that I really wanted to buy that I've made full ask on twice, and the guy always backs out of selling the darn thing. It's because it's got that R2B2 zoning.
So this was never a property where the mother was like, or at least not in the last 5 years, she wasn't living there.
And now that I know, see, it was listed back in 2015 for 120,000. That's a whole different world. And then it stayed off market until 2021. There's all kinds. It was offered for 450,000 in 2022. These people don't have any idea what they're doing.
Weird.
So the nice thing is and this has always been the case. You and I have talked about this probably for a decade. Ohio is interesting in that you can buy a property with 20% down, and typically it's cash flow positive even when carrying a note. It used to be 2000, like when we were really buying 2012 to 2016, we could get that cover on a 10-year note. Then it went to a 20. Now it's a 30, but you can still cover it so you can add the asset to your portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great cash flow market, but just the biggest question for scaling a fund is, do we have the appreciation or the built-in equity to pull out of it and buy more?
What's really going to come down to, and this is the hard part, the last appraisal that I could find was like 2022, and it was for like 247,000, and that was pre-remodel. So what you would need is, say you buy it for 310 and the appraisal comes in at 330. Now you've got your Grant Cardone marketing message where we always buy properties below replacement cost marketing piece. And now you can put it into the fund at the appraised value of 330 and raise capital against that and actually already have a fund profit of 20K. So, but you don't know what the appraisal is going to come back as.
Yeah, I was just looking at the offer. We have an appraisal contingency in there.
Well, financing banks require it, so you don't have to write it in there.
Oh, in New York, we don't do those.
They don't require financing. Doesn't require appraisal to make sure that they're not lending money against the property.
They require an appraisal, but there's no appraisal contingency in the offers.
Oh yeah, no, there isn't. It's
okay.
the financing contingency.
Okay.
So when you put in there that you're doing traditional financing, which it says in the offer, that in de facto says that appraisal is required.
Got it. Okay.
The way that I always word my stipulations in an offer is that like any issue greater than 1%, and you can read that in there, would allow us to renegotiate the price, request cash, or cancel the deal. So if the appraisal came in at 1% below the ask, we could walk away.
Got it. Okay. I mean, yeah. So at 310, like, so for everybody listening, at 310, we would be buying this property at basically a 7.4% cap rate, and the cash on cash return would be 6.7%. So for us buying the property, like I said, like that's a decent investment, especially when you look at it from like a tax adjusted return standpoint. Like it because you've tax advantages in real estate that you wouldn't have in something like stocks. It's a good investment. We just need to dial in kind of the structure of the fund to make sure that once we buy it, we can actually buy more.
Yeah, and so you sent me over the deck for one of the other fund offerings, and I looked at that while I was also building some of this stuff out. The preferred rate of return, equity split, asset management fee, property management fee, acquisition fee, disposition fee, refinance fee. And then I also added in the corporate structure of like the fund itself, the management company, and then the properties, the individual property LLCs, if we self-manage up to a specific point. And then the 10-year pro forma. It doesn't throw off a ton of like asset management fees, which actually go to the fund, but it does throw off something. And then there are property management fees in there that can cover some costs. This property itself, though, in the first 10 years, all of the distributable cash flow ends up going back to the investors. It never exceeds the preferred 8% rate in the first 10 years to throw off to us in any type of split, which isn't ideal. but I can't calculate another property that would do this any differently just yet.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we buy the property and we just use debt before we raise any capital against it, we just buy the property with debt, our monthly cash flow at $310,000 is going to be $346 per month. That would be our cash flow. If we then go out and we raise money from investors to take out the loan, let's say we raise the full 310. I'm getting lost in the numbers here. So if we raise the full 310, at that point, we would be collecting a management fee of 1.5%, and we would be collecting a property management fee of 10%.
Yes.
And so that's
now, don't forget though, the property management fee is, there's logistics behind that. Like that's like if we were to hire a third party company, that's what they would charge to collect the rents, be on call for maintenance and things like that. So it's not a net positive or a net cash item.
Right. Because we're going to have operating expenses. Yeah. And at that point, once the 310 is raised from investors, we'll be collecting, let's say, just 11.5% in fees. That's not an equity interest in the property at that point. So that's just, we're getting a fee. So in terms of the equity interest that we have in the property at that point, is it the 30% sponsor that you have here on the spreadsheet?
It is, but that means after investors have recouped their full money, right? So if you buy it for 310 and you sell it for 410, the investors are going to get their 310 back. And out of that last 100, 70 is going to go to investors and 30 is going to go to us. So that's really where the model becomes attractive over a 10 or 20 year time frame, where as fast as you can build the portfolio up, when you get to that exit point, that's where the real money is for us. Unless we can get it up to $100 million fund and running at a 1%.
Right. And at that point though, but prior to exiting the property, we don't have any kind of revenue coming in from an equity.
We don't, unless we can get the rate of return above 8%. Right. And on this deal, what is it's actually 6.73. So, but if you can get it over time, if you look at the 10-year performer doesn't measure the percentages, but I did have another calculation that did. Around a year 11 or 12, 12 or 13, the rate of return based on the increase in rents does go north of 8%. So then you have the preferred rate of 8% being paid out. And then whatever's left over then is getting split 70-30, and you do start to see cash flow on it.
So basically, once we raise the capital and we take out the loan, we would go from our $346 a monthly cash flow with a debt position to having $366 per month in cash flow, which is coming from the sponsor fees.
Yes. Yep. You'd have free cash flow of 1908, but most of that would be getting paid back out to the investors.
Right. We need to do
so we make the same money either way.
Yeah, that's what I'm starting to think. Like, the only reason we would want to raise money then is to be able to free up our capital to buy more.
Yeah, the only reason you raise money is scaling, right?
Yeah.
If we're gonna do 10 properties over the next 10 years, we just do it ourselves. If we want to do 100 properties over the next 2 to 5 years, you raise capital.
100 properties at $300K each would put us at how much under management? Like 30 million?
Yep.
Yeah. And then at 30 million, what are our sponsor fees?
Well, 1%, 3 million.
Right? Yeah.
300,000 only. But
what do I want to raise a fund for?
Well, the equity though, right? If that 30 million turns into 40 million in 10 years, and you're getting 30%
of that.
Yeah. So now you've got 3 million at the end of that. It really is a numbers game. The numbers have to get big fast to make it viable.
That's the thing. Like, for a fund to make sense, the numbers have to get really big, and they have to get big really fast. Otherwise, I could put the money in NVIDIA.
I'd maybe do Google right now, but...
Yeah. I mean, if our goal is to be able to, just spitballing for a minute, let's say our goal is to each pull out $600K per year from the fund. That's $1.2 million a year. $1.2 million a year is, with a 1% management fee, just to keep it simple, is $8 billion in assets under management that we would need.
That's
Am I
not
doing
right.
am I
No,
doing that right, or is it 800 million? Am I missing a
it
zero?
wouldn't even be 800 million. If you're trying to get 1.2 million at 1%, it would be 120 million. You don't need a calculator for that one.
All right. What kind of rabbit hole did I just go down?
I
Okay.
don't know. But also, we have the asset management fee at 1.5%, not 1%, because that's what it was in the
Right.
deck that you sent. So
Right.
now you're actually at 80 million assets under in assets under management, or 75. Okay, but close.
Although the one thing we should look at is with that deck that I sent you, that was a very large deal. That was like a $300 million acquisition. And I know that sometimes there's a sliding scale depending on the size of the fund
Yeah,
where,
well, and it really, and I learned this back when we were doing the results ventures fund, is that the terms of the deal aren't necessarily just about the deal. They're about your brand position. They're about your network effect, your credibility, your historical returns. Right? If it's a really, really hot deal and everybody wants in it, it doesn't have to be the best deal in the world, which seems counterintuitive, but you can get more as the management company than a deal that no one's ever heard of. So coming out of the gate, we need to be extremely attractive just to get invited to the dance. Then we can put on a little weight and do our freshman 20 right after that.
and how do we do that? How do
I
we
don't, well, you're the
attract
branding
this more?
expert, right? You're the branding
Yeah.
expert. Your job is to do that. I think it all comes down to, like, if you listen to any of the advertisements, whether they're from Grant Cardone or what's the other big one on CNBC series on satellite radio, right? They talk about how many years they've been in business. They talk about how many investors they have. They talk about how much money they've paid out to investors. They talk about assets under management. All of those things take time, but every single one of them started exactly where we are right now. Although Grant Cardone started with a massive audience and following before he did this.
Yep. Well, he also owned, 1,000 units of his own too before he started the fund. So
Well, see, that's the other thing too. And that is the flip side, is how well could we leverage credit in cash to build a decent enough portfolio to make a difference, right? If we're two guys going out trying to raise money on one $300,000 duplex in the entire portfolio, we're probably not going to get as much attention as if we brought $2 million in assets in a portfolio to the table. Gets a little harder then.
So we're limited on what we can do from conventional financing, but there's also hard money and private lending.
There is.
If we found two more of these deals tomorrow, let's say we buy this one with conventional financing, like we're planning to do. If we find two more tomorrow and take those down with hard money, I know the P&L is not going to look great, but it gives us some momentum from a number of
It
doors.
does, but, and I mean, there's always buts to this. You have LTV ratios on hard money that have to be met. So let's say we get this deal done with conventional, and then the next one we go and we try to do like a 24-month, is it a DCSR, where you're getting lent money on 50% LTV, right? Like, I have a paid off rental. If I brought that to the table and did 50% LTV on that plus 50% of the property we're buying, we could get that done. When you got to the third one now, you're double conventional, right? On one rental, on one private. I am hard money, 24-month interest only across two. The third one becomes much harder to do until you're out of that 24-month cycle and you're into a more traditional type of lending. The flip side of that is to try to find a way to get a credit line that you can just write checks off of, but you need a really big one.
What if we use the hard money and then refi it out with conventional? Like 6
If
months
you
later.
could do, if you could do that, you'd be better off just doing conventional, because hard money is going to be 11, 12, 13%, and it's going to have 2, 3, 4 points on the front end, right?
Yeah.
So they get all their money up front. So no matter what you do after that, they don't really care.
Okay.
And a lot of them will lock you in for 24 months, right? You can't pay it off early. They're going to want all the money anyways. So, I mean, there's options there, but they're not first resort.
Right.
Starting the fund is still the most attractive to build long-term asset values.
Oh, yeah. What if we looked at bigger deals or deals that could have forced appreciation?
So bigger deals are available. I talked to you about right around the corner from me, a really unique fourplex that they're asking $500,000 for. That's in the best school district in the area. Like, you do not find any other property like this in that neighborhood. There's nothing else around. You've got $500,000 to $2 million houses, and you have this fourplex that I think was built before all the neighborhoods around here. That's actually in decent shape. But you could do something like that. You're still going to have the same cap rate numbers as this $300,000 deal, but you're going to get 2 extra units.
What about $1 million? What could we buy for $1 million?
Now you like right around one neighborhood over, I think it was a 12 or 16 unit just sold for $980,000. So there are some of those deals on the market. I do think that there's a 26 unit for sale for $1.8 million.
What's the cap rate on that?
I don't know. I don't think they'd published all the rents. They'd published all the unit sizes, and I guess you could do comparables. But I think it was only at like 60 or 70% occupancy. So there are bigger deals to be done. The financing on that gets harder.
Some ways it feels like the same amount of work, though, to do bigger deal versus a smaller deal.
It does. The value proposition of doing those bigger deals is then it becomes so much easier to go out and raise the money, right?
Higher quality asset, Well,
you know what? I might debate the higher quality, but the bigger numbers, when you go out to raise money for a project, right? If you go out to raise $1 million, people kind of laugh at you. Same exact project going out to raise $5 million gets more attention. Raising $20 million, now the whole world will listen to you. It seems counterintuitive again, but people want big picture.
Yeah. Doing a bigger deal would also give us just everything proportionally is bigger. So the cash flow is bigger, which gives us more ability to do more in terms of scaling faster. It's just the financing piece. Like if we were to get conventional financing on a $1.8 million deal for 20% down, that's what, 360 down? So at that point, we would need to probably bring in investors to help
for the deal. Yeah. So now you got a horse and a cart question.
Yeah. But we could look to partner with somebody who has a database or a community of investors, bring them into the deal.
You could, but then now you might be writing checks for 5 to 10% of the money raised out to a third party. And now all of your numbers get skewed on your internal rate of return.
Yeah. But and there's also the private placement memo too, the PPM, which is going to cost you although I sent you that new company a couple of weeks ago that does PPMs for a fraction of the cost, but it's pretty expensive to do that too, even for this deal.
I spent $12,000 having a PPM done for another project years ago that is based all on Ohio law. It has all of the structuring already in place. So you can just swap out the names. And I think there's this thing called AI that we could run it through because that's cheaper than a lawyer. And who cares whether it gets you in trouble?
Well, there's another thing called SEC.
Well, the nice thing is today, though, that there's so much available data, you can build the framework. And instead of going to a lawyer and paying them $10,000, $15,000 to start from scratch, you can maybe pay them $1,200 or $1,500 to just review what you already have and tell you if it's okay.
Yeah.
I think it's cool, though, that we actually made an offer. Whether or not we buy this property, it was our first step to actually making this a reality, not an idea.
Yep. Yeah, so the next question is, what's our counteroffer going to be?
I mean, if we go back and we say we'll accept it at $310, but we want our current inspection terms and we want the seller to pay all costs, I believe we have an 80 or 90% chance of getting accepted. I think this is just a chess move by the realtor so that when we come back, there's a little bit of give and take, right?
Yep. Like I said, at 310 to 6.7% cash on cash, it's a good investment, but we just need to figure out, can we raise money on it?
Yep. And it's funny. I don't think
buying it. I don't think you can go wrong. I don't think you could go wrong buying it.
I don't think you could go wrong buying it either, given the cash flow and everything that's already in place. But neither of us are jumping up and down we got to get this done right now. I don't know if any deal is that good in the market right now. And if it is, it's gone before we even know it exists. So
yeah. Yeah, I think for me, the most important thing is there needs to be a direct path between this one property and like a plan to build the fund. Because the property alone is a good investment, but I think there are better investments in other asset classes right now.
Well,
But
and then I had a question about that. Number one, I don't disagree, but I also look at this, is this as much about diversification as it is about maximization, right? I've talked about in recent months how at 47, the way that I'm approaching things is significantly different than when I was 35, right?
yeah,
100% risk is no longer acceptable. So diversification into cash flowing real estate asset seems more attractive to me today, where 10 years ago, I'd be like, put it all on Bitcoin.
and I'm in the middle where I'm not going to put it on Bitcoin, but I am willing to accept more risk in equities. Um, but yeah, you're right. The real estate is a good hedge. It's good diversification. Yeah, I mean, as long as we can build a business plan around a fund for it,
Yeah,
that's
it's all going to come down to let's call it like maybe a financing loop, circle, whatever you want to call it, how fast you can move from one to the next based on available capital and credit.
I mean, worst case scenario too, let's say we buy it, right? We pay 310 and it's a good asset, right? It's cash flowing. But 6 months from now, we figure out that it's not the right property for the fund. You think we could flip it?
Possibly. One of the things that I've been looking at, and they were talking about it on CNBC today, is that the market, especially in real estate, has been increasing year over year, every year since what, 2008, right? Where you had this huge spike, and then you had like was it 2008 and 9? You had a pretty massive downturn. We are due for a correction, right? So if you saw a 10% drawdown on the property and you bought it at 330 and it was worth 290 and you had to flip it at that, would you be comfortable with it, right? Like that's just measuring worst case scenario. You're probably not going to see a greater than 10% drawdown in the market unless there's some catastrophe out there, which we've had COVID. We've had the 2008 financial crisis. We've had the 2000 .com bust. There's a bubble. There's not risk in calamity.
Yeah. No, that's true. Because going back to like when I asked you about, do you think there are other offers? What I wonder is do you think somebody would come in and buy this at 330?
As fast as properties typically sell, the fact that someone hasn't come in and bought at 330 says something. What it's saying, I don't exactly know. I don't know if it's like the sweet spot for duplexes in this market is in that 180 to 200,000 range, maybe up to 240. But those are on 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 800 square foot style duplexes. This, you're getting a 1,600 square foot, 3-bedroom, 1-bath, and you're getting a 1,270 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath. So it's not apples to apples. And that could be good or bad. To me, this seems like it's such a good thing to be getting these two separate units. I don't know if other investors look at it differently.
I don't see why you wouldn't. I mean,
I don't either. Like I even if I play devil's advocate, I don't see the other side.
are there any zoning or like other issues you could think of with having them separate, detached?
No, not with the R2B2 zoning, right? And I only know how to navigate R2B2 because of that canal floating property that I've been trying to buy since what, 2022?
Yeah.
I'm not rushing to text the realtor back. We probably need to firm up by the end of the day. But I do think that this was a good conversation because it helps us to continue to flush out. Now, if we look at the fund as the long-term anchor to all of this, as part of the WealthWise business, we still have the front end that we've been talking about. I wanted to preface one thing. The most watched reel we've ever had is about to hit 10,000 views, and this is non-boosted, no advertising money, was really on the multiples of an HVAC company, the roll-up strategy. And when I went back and I looked at a lot of the other reels off of the last call that were getting a lot of views, a lot of them were on this blue collar business side of things, right? exploring how people can start franchise locations for a lot of these different electrical companies, plumbing companies, HVAC companies. This whole thing for investors has gotten huge for private equity, right?
Oh,
You
yeah.
can go out, and I was looking, you can start a 1 hour heating and air conditioning location for anywhere. It's like between 80 and 240,000, depending on the market and depending on how you want to get started. So let's say an easy 200,000. I'm watching some of these franchisees put that 200,000 out, get up to $1 million in gross sales in their first year with a projected of 2.4 in the second, right? Even at a 20% margin on 2.4, so you got 480 at a 3-time multiple, your $200,000 investment becomes 1.4 million in like 24 to 36 months. I really want to explore more of that in the different, like I'm starting to research all the different franchise brands, all of the different service lines, looking at the scalability, the infrastructure, the technology that it would take. I really think that there is a huge audience for people that are interested in that opportunity to be their own boss, build their own wealth, and do it in blue collar businesses, right? Who wouldn't want a SaaS company that prints $1 million a month? It's not that easy to do. We all think that we're going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, but we're not. But what is tangible is there's 120,000 HVAC companies in the country, and as many as 30 to 40% of them need to change hands in the next 5 years as the final of the boomers retire. And they're all in the market, right? If you go into some of the Facebook groups, every day someone's talking about buying one or selling one. And this isn't even a buy-sell group. It's such a big thing. There's so much wealth being made in that, hey, you start a blue collar company, you build your wealth, you invest the profits into equities and real estate, and you build out a great wealth trajectory for you and future generations.
Well, yeah. I mean, there are so many opportunities out there right now, especially because these PE firms want to roll these businesses up. The multiples, like we were talking about in that video, are just insane. And it doesn't surprise me at all that that's the highest viewed video that we've gotten so far, because we're seeing the same thing with like our PE clients that go on podcasts for like HVAC companies and stuff like that. Like the episodes end up blowing up.
Yeah, because that's what everybody wants to hear. What's my golden parachute at the end of this equation? Where am I going?
Because the formula is, if you can build one of those companies to $10 million in revenue, the multiple becomes ridiculous after $10 million in revenue. You're talking about like life-changing, not like $5-6 million exit. You're talking like a $100 million exit. It's generational wealth.
And more people are doing it. And really what it comes down to is with the right, and I don't know that franchises are always the best answer to this, but they do provide a framework to navigate a lot of the unknowns. So you don't have to learn it yourself, but really the right tech stack, the right marketing, the right accounting, the right cash flow. These are not extremely hard businesses to be in. Most of the franchisees that I'm working with from a marketing perspective have 2 or 3 partners. You've typically got the money guy, which I'm finding more often than not is typically a financial planner or some type of investor that goes out and finds an operations manager or a general manager and builds the business with them on like an 80-20 or even a 90-10 split of ownership. This operations manager doesn't have the capital to go out and do it themselves or doesn't want to. They have 10, 20 years experience running these businesses and they just want to do it. And these money guys are minting off of them. I don't know. I'm any other spaces with the trajectory and a roadmap that's like, it's a known, accepted blueprint to put $200,000 out and have a potential $1.4 million paper return in 24 months, right? And then in 5 to 7 years, have a $5 to $10 million exit. And if you're one of those people that manages to scale, sky's the limit.
Yeah.
Now, Richard, get me on some of those HVAC podcasts.
How about roofing? We've got a roofing one right now.
No. I am 100% focused on HVAC.
Okay.
There's reasons for this. Three reasons, right? One, you've got an ongoing relationship with your customer, right? Annual contracts, maintenance, magnet on the furnace. That way you can buy into the 3, 5, 7-year long-term relationship that it might take for a replacement. The second thing is that you have high average repair costs. I can average in an average ticket of $350 to $500 per repair on most systems. So I can use that to aggregate the cost of my leads. Number three, if I can take somebody from a 4% install conversion rate to a 10% install conversion rate, installs are between $7,000 and $12,000. Right? You're chasing wind damage, hoping to be the one that knocks on their door to get the job. Then you're fighting with insurance. You got a $20,000 job, but your relationship is done with that person. You've got nothing to sell them for the next 25 years.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not a big fan of roofing. I like electrical. I like plumbing. I like septic, but I love HVAC.
That makes sense.
So it's all in the numbers.
Okay.
Maybe we start a 1-hour franchise and we just grow our own HVAC business.
I was actually just thinking that, like, instead of this duplex, let's buy the 1-hour plumbing franchise.
You know what's funny? The one in Akron Canton is actually not taken yet. There's one in Medina and there's one in Cleveland, but this market is not taken yet. We just don't have the operator.
Yeah, that's the thing. You need an operator, but the returns on that are much higher than real estate. There's more risk. That's why. There's
more risk, and the most successful franchisees that I'm working with are running 20-25% cash flow to marketing costs, right? Corporate wants you to be in like minimum of 12, maximum of 16, but the ones that are growing are north of 20%. It takes some cojones on an owner to be able to put that much cash out for an extended period of time. But the compounding nature of returns on that investment are exponential, right? You might have a loss leader on lead acquisition, but if you get in the door and build a relationship with those customers, right? You make your money back in 12 months, you're now in profit at 24. And if their system goes an extra 5 or 7 years and you have the relationship, you've got a 50x return on lead cost. But not everybody's willing to think like that.
Right. I mean, you can build the blue collar Berkshire.
Blue collar Berkshire. There we go. That's the name of our brand. Interesting. So I think more focus in on that. It'll be more helpful to the audience to show them like, okay, investing in real estate is great. If you don't want to deal with the stress of having to knock on doors to collect rent or being on call at 2:00 in the morning when the furnace breaks, you can find funds like the WealthWise Fund if you're an accredited investor. And then you can outsource the headaches and still get all of the return. But you got to make the money, right? Maybe you've got a good job and you're throwing off extra cash. You're a coach or a consultant. You run a marketing agency. You're a white collar professional who's not losing their job to AI. You can take that money and you can invest in a fund. But if you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out what the heck am I going to do, right? You could start an agency. It's not hard. It really isn't. And you can even outsource most of the work. It's not easy, but it's not hard. Or maybe you need to be starting a blue collar company and protecting yourself from the AI revolution, or the AI invasion and participate in the blue collar revolution.
That's it. I mean, it's a 2-step process. You need high cash flow. You got to scale your cash flow through starting a business or an agency or blue collar. And then you've got to invest the cash flow.
Yep. And then if you wait long enough and you do it just right, that cash flow or that investment compounds and you get to stage 3 and you generational wealth exit. Whether that's going to be through us selling an agency, whether that's going to be us building through a real estate portfolio, or it's going to be in our own internal investments. That's what we try to do every day.
Yeah. I mean, the younger you start, the compounding really adds up.
It's not younger, it's early. ERLI.
Early. With an I. Early with an I. And without an A.
Yep. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for listening to us talk about this deal. Hopefully next week, we'll be talking about a commercial real estate deal with potential apartment developments. If I can solve one of the problems with the city about a second exit or entrance into the building. the big thing, if you were to take away something from this call, from my perspective, is never stop trying to figure out what the right thing is going to be. I think it's Mark Cuban that says you only have to get right. You only have to be right once. Alex Hormozi, you only have to get rich once. Once you've done it, everything changes. But it's not just going to happen. You've got to be out there trying. I'm not going to say you got to be out there hustling, but you've got to be out there. You've got to be looking at deals. You've got to be trying to put together deals. You've got to be working. You've got to always be working on them until that right one happens. And then everything changes. Richard, any final thoughts for the audience today?
That's all I've got.
That's all you've got. All right. Thank you, everyone. I apologize for being on my phone today. Last minute.
Worked.
Yeah, it worked. Hopefully the sound quality is good.
It worked.
And Richard, I set up a new recording studio in my office. It's got new microphone, new camera, new backdrop. I was super excited about using it today, and then I wasn't there. So next week, you'll get to see the new and improved. Do you think the new camera will make me look better, or does high definition? Wait, is this my good side?
I think that's what it does. Yeah. The more you spend on the camera.
The more I spend on the camera, the more realistic. That's not a good thing. All right. We'll catch you everybody next week. Thank you for joining us for the WealthWise Podcast. I'm Roger Bryan, and that's
Richard Lorenzen.
Thank you.